Thanks everyone for joining the Applicants Conference for the GRID program. I'll sort of be the MC for today. My name is Andrew Chase, and I'm an energy program specialist with the department. And I'll pass it to my other colleagues in the room to introduce themselves.
Hi folks, Melissa Bailey with the Public Service Department. I'm the director of the State Energy Office. Thanks for joining. See some familiar faces. So hopefully this will be helpful for you all as you scope out your projects under the GRID funding opportunity.
Hi, Sherry Yeager with the State Energy Office under Melissa, and I am the grants manager, helping SEO and other divisions within the department, working our way through grants and contracts and with federal funds. And here as a sort of subject matter expert only with the contract grant process. So if any questions come up while you guys are talking, I'll be here, hopefully able to answer, able to find the answer.
Chris Heine, energy program specialist here in the State Energy Office. I was kind of ushering this program through until we brought on Andrew to take over the program. So nice to meet everybody.
And I think you're on the line. If you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Ann Margolis. I'm the Deputy Director of the Planning Division. I'm going to be part of the team reviewing proposals.
All right, great. Thanks. All right, so welcome everyone. I think just to start, I'm going to kick off with a brief PowerPoint presentation just to provide an overview of the program. I know many of you probably, it might be a recap for some, but just to get things kicked off, I will just go over the program at a high level. So just one sec. Great. All right, so the department's calling this program the Grid Resilience and Infrastructure Deployment Program, and it's funded by DOE's Grid Resilience State Formula Grant Program, and that was established a couple of years ago under the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. And so to date, Vermont has received roughly $8 million of funding. That comprises the first 3 years of the formula funding. So we do expect to receive in the future another $2 to $3 million for both the 2025 year and the 2026 year. But there's no specific timeline on future solicitations for this program. So the primary program objective is to reduce the frequency and duration of outages. That's kind of like the overall objective. And the department's taken a somewhat unique approach to distribute funding under this program. So we developed a formula to allocate funding for each of the DU's service territories. This formula we developed based on 3 different criteria. So the first is SAIDI averages over 5 years, customers per line mile, and also the share of residential customers. Generally speaking, the eligible entities, I think, a lot of the folks on the phone are with the DUs, but electric distribution providers, but there's also a few other categories that under statute are eligible. The next slide just kind of shows I think 10 or 11 eligible activities that are listed in the statute. Some of these are pretty bread and butter activities related to reliability, like undergrounding of equipment or or vegetation management. But some are a little more broad. We have received some questions about some specific technologies. And, this conference day is an opportunity to dive into some specific questions. We may not be able to answer everything related to a specific project, but we'll do our best to follow up with our contacts at Department of Energy and try to get the answers. So here's a really general program timeline. So we came out with the RFP in January, and proposals are due next month on the 28th of April. We expect, so this program is unique in the sense that there's a two-step review process. So first, the department, staff at the department will be reviewing proposals. And then after that step, we expect to send those on for a second review. So the Department of Energy, specifically the Grid Deployment Office at the department, will also have to review every proposal we send and sign off. We've heard a variety of timelines for how long that takes, but we're hoping that we should hear back from them late summer. But this is a tentative timeline, and hopefully things stick as close to it as possible, but we'll see. And with that, thanks for holding on for the brief overview. I hope it wasn't too much of a recap, but I think we're generally going to open it up to questions, and staff on the line and in the room will do our best to answer. And feel free to just jump in and unmute yourself, and I'll do my best to pick people to ask questions first. So,
Chase, John Morley with Orleans and Barton. Have you got a spreadsheet kind of showing what you're talking about for dollars, the way you've broken it out under SAFE, KD, miles of distribution line, residential customers, on what each distribution utility has for potential grant funding dollars?
Yeah, we do have a table that's available. I can put it in the chat. It doesn't show the specific inputs that went to the formula, but it shows the cost allocation for each of the utilities, and also the varying cost match requirements. I can put that in the chat real quick. Any other questions?
Hey, Andrew, this is Michael Lazorchek from Stowe Electric. I appreciate you helping out. JJ and I respond to the questions that we've asked you via email. I was curious if you could give some more context to what the DOE review might be. Like, I assume it'll be fairly easy to clear the department scrutiny, but as we're taking time to put forth projects and we're pinning budgets to the funding, is the DOE review just kind of checking boxes, or are they going to actually comb through it and potentially deny utility projects?
It's a good question.
I think the answer is yes, Michael. I think they're going to probably check to make sure these things are eligible for the program, and they do have the ability to kind of deny the programs if they don't think they're eligible. So,
do you have like guidance that they're looking at, or previous projects have been approved that might give some context for the utilities to select projects that we know, or at least have a good likelihood of being approved?
I think the guidance is the eligibility requirements that have been posted. So,
yeah, I don't think we have a ton of insight in projects that have been approved in other states and specifically the details of those.
Okay, so this is, are we to treat this as it's a competitive solicitation? Or can we expect to, as long as we check the boxes on your list, complete the form, we're more likely than not to get the funding?
I
Yeah, Michael, I think that's right. And to the DOE check, it's really a check that we, the department, are selecting projects that do in fact comply with the legal requirements. So won't expect there to be challenges there, but that is DOE doing its due diligence once we've selected the projects. And on the competitiveness, no, you're essentially not competing against other utilities. If you select projects that are eligible, and we have a wide range of those projects, we would anticipate funding those.
Okay, that's great.
Is that
That's
helpful?
really helpful. And to just one more question that's probably more complicated. Do you have any idea if this DOE money could be treated as a match for another federal funded project?
So no, the funding being used for this grant program cannot be used as federal match towards another program that is also using federal funding.
And you can't use federal funding for a match for this program.
And you can't use federal funding for match for this program unless the federal funding you have allows for it. The only thing off the top of my head that I know allows that is if you still had like ARPA funds or COVID funds, those can be matched against federal dollars.
Yeah, USDA projects as well. But yeah, that's really helpful.
Yep, USDA. Yep.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, to follow on that point, Lewis Porter from Washington Electric, to follow on that point, we can follow up on this offline, but I think our US loan funding typically is allowed to match other federal. So that would be an important consideration for us to make sure we understand. So we'll follow up offline. Thanks.
And that's what I'm thinking
Yeah,
about.
so this funding definitely can be used for match with federal funding, but if you have other federal funding that's allowable as match, you can use it for this program, the match for this program.
Yeah, typically those RUS loans can be used to match, like say the GRIP money or other federal grant money. So anyway, we'll follow up with that on our end with RUS. But thanks.
Great.
And I just wanted to follow up on the previous question where you guys were talking about with the DOE approving. I know in past grants where we've had this, where there's that 2-step verification, there's nothing that holds us back from when we receive a proposal to come back and ask you questions if we want to make sure, or we need to clear up maybe some program items so they fall under that those DOE requirements. So we're not going to send something to DOE without verifying on our part that we know it's a project that will go through, and there could be back and forth with you to, clear up or maybe write up just to fix something in proposal. So you won't be turned down, and I'm saying this but you won't be turned down just because, something comes in, it doesn't follow 100%. If there's a piece that we know needs to be fixed, we can go back and work on that proposal with you.
That unless somebody else is in the queue, that kind of goes to one of my questions, which is, should we be planning on putting in more projects than can be funded with the amount outlined in the spreadsheet? Or should we, in case some of them are not appropriate, or should we limit our request to the spreadsheet funding and assume you'll come back to us if there are ones that are ineligible? I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm making sense or not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that we've left it open where you could submit multiple proposals that exceed the allocation, and that would put it in a position where we would probably pick the one that's the most competitive. But I'm not going to weigh in to tell you what's the better strategy. But I don't know if others have thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'll just add, like, Louis, I don't know if this was implicit in your question, like, we probably won't come back if we turn down a project, won't come back and say, hey, that one didn't work, but what else do you have for us? So I think from a strategy perspective, you'd want to put in alternatives if you didn't feel like some of the projects were sure to be funded.
Yeah, so we won't be messing up your process if we put in more projects than the allocation, essentially.
Exactly, that's right.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
I think another thing to keep in mind is multifaceted projects, as we understand it, that have one part that might not be eligible would likely be denied in full at the DOE level. So if you have 7 different kind of measures in one project that you're applying through or for with this, and one of them is not eligible, all 7 would be deemed ineligible, and it would be back to the drawing board kind of situation. So as much as it may add some work on our end to have multiple kind of proposals to review, it may be advantageous to put through multiple proposals with singular kind of projects than have one proposal with multiple projects.
Makes a lot of sense. Thank you. That's helpful.
Hey, this is James from Jacksonville. I just wasn't sure, is there expectation that we would fund the project in full and then be reimbursed? Or would we be receiving the funding to support the project?
I think this,
It's a reimbursement. This grant is a reimbursement grant, so you'd have to pay for the work you've done and then invoice us. And then we'll reimburse once the work is completed and you've paid your invoice. You've paid the initial invoice to your vendor.
Okay, thank you.
But we're gonna know that that has been approved. So James is right on with this because I've been dealing with FEMA and all that. You got to spend the money first, and then hopefully in this process you're going to obligate the dollars early on through the DOE process, so that we actually know the dollars are there, so that we can go out and borrow money if we have to.
Yeah. So the dollars will definitely be there. We've got our official grant award. So we have the money available. And what we do is we pay, we receive your invoice, we'll pay with our state dollars, and then we do a drawdown. So you're not actually waiting on the feds before we invoice you. We'll pay with our state funds, and then we'll actually do a drawdown on our end that pull down the federal funds to reimburse us. So it's reimbursing all the way, but we have the funds in our state money to cover a cost for all these invoices as well.
Yeah, there could be some interest cost though associated with this on our end, right?
If you're financing the cost match, is that what you're implying?
Yeah. So, and I don't know what the turnaround is going to be from you folks at the DPS. So I'm just guessing we got to go out, borrow money, do a project. We'll draw down on the borrowed money, and then finalize the project, send cancel checks and everything to DPS, and then there's a time lapse there. I'm guessing before we get it from the DPS. While at the same time probably accruing some interest cost, and I'm guessing we're going to eat that. Am I saying that correctly?
Yes, it sounds like it.
They can use some of that interest cost as cost share as well.
Oh yeah, you can. Yeah, you should be able to use some of that interest cost as your cost share as well. So yeah, and it's roughly 30 days. When we ask to get invoiced, we asked for a 30-day turnaround. So generally it'll be invoiced, and then 30, with a due date of 30 days from date of invoice. It generally works less than 30, but like the feds say to us all the time right now, it could be 30. So, but yeah, it's generally about 15 to 20 days before you'll see payment. And you can use that interest, right, as your cost share.
Now, if it's work we're doing internally, one of the projects we're talking about is just a grid hardening project, replacing poles and things like that, just to get things upgraded that were put in maybe in the 50s. Is that something we essentially do the work and send an invoice on behalf of our utility to the Department of Public Service?
Yes.
Okay. And then, sorry, my last question. So if we have the grant allocation amount in your table, let's say we submit projects, but only some of them get approved, and we only use 50% of that funding. Are we able to come back in with other projects at that point, or is it a one-time? You submit everything up front, and you get what you get, and then the rest is reallocated somewhere else?
Yeah, we haven't made a determination of how that's going to work. I think partially we're trying to see what we receive in future years of funding, but for this funding round, you wouldn't be able to reapply for the rest of that amount, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
So this is Ken Mason calling. This is Ken Mason at Linden Electric. I just got a couple basic questions. On these projects, can we keep it as simple as just saying our project is trimming, period?
Yes.
Do we have
Yep.
to then go out and try to find the areas that need trimming and come up with estimates as to what it's going to be? Or do we just say the amount that we have to self-fund is about what we have for a year of annual trimming cost, and the amount from the grant is about double that? So we're looking at, maybe we can do like 3 years of trimming in one. So how much preparation do we have to give you in order to just say, let's get this thing started?
I think what we'd want to see is a plan for where that work is going to be done and the expected impacts of that work that is being done. So, the reporting for this will need to show, that this work has improved kind of the outcomes of resiliency in your day-to-day kind of versus your business as usual kind of case. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so is it as simple as, our mapping here is MPower, and maybe we don't have a vegetative layer yet, but is that something we'd want to take a look at and use that as going out and overlapping our mapping to show you the areas that we will do the trimming? And it has to all be done at once, or is it just as it goes on in time?
I think we would definitely want to see where the activities were planned, because there's in the application process, there's specific questions that address how to measure the impacts. So I think in order to do that, you'd have to identify the areas receiving the vegetation management and the relative or projected impacts of that work.
So it sounds like then higher priorities will be given to like 3-phase lines as opposed to single-phase line, where you have fewer outages. That's what's going to govern it.
Yeah, I think that would be preferable. Like, right? Like, we want to see this. You said something about maybe taking 1 year's kind of and doing 3 years worth of vegetation management in 1 year. I think that shows that you're kind of trebling the impact of your vegetation management, and hopefully, yes, that would if it was on a 3-phase line, that would have more impact on more of your customers, whereas the end of the line kind of project that might serve one customer but really needs trees trimmed, wouldn't have the same impact, right?
I think there's just also, if you have the ability to point to recent storms, major storms, if you have your 4.900 reports and you have some granularity in your worst circuits, for example, that you would be able to point to those reports and say, we're addressing some of the highest need areas, the areas that are most prone to outages on our system based on this historical record.
Along those lines, obviously the improvement in the outage scores, outage metrics are an important part of this. Are you looking for improvement in the outage metrics on those particular feeders or line segments, or are you looking for impact on the system overall?
I think if you could demonstrate both, that would be useful information to have. But I think probably those specific feeders or circuits would be the most valuable to measure the proximate impact of the measures that you take.
Great.
Chase, for Barton's sake, they haven't performed GIS yet and going out and collection of all that data. Would that be something, and also advancing forward AMI, because that brings a lot of benefits to the utility. Are those acceptable type projects in your mind?
My understanding was that AMI, I think, does fit into this. I don't want to say it's eligible and be held to it, but I think it certainly can fit into the categories that are eligible.
Okay, because obviously we can harden our system because we have some old copper lines and in woods. We want to get them roadside, run new conductor, things of that nature, voltage upgrades. But we're also trying to move forward with the IT and making our grid smarter and more resilient. And obviously that costs a lot of money. So I was thinking maybe we could put as one of the projects, at least for Barton's sake, into going out and acquiring all that data for the GIS system. And I think that would really benefit Barton Electric in a lot of different ways. I just wasn't sure if that would be looked upon favorably.
Yeah, I think if you can justify it, I think that's what we're looking for to kind of fit that eligibility.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Any more questions?
Well, if nobody else is waiting, I'll just, we're looking at moving lines to the road, reconductoring, going to, spacer Hendrix kind of construction, additional tie points that will allow feeding of the circuits from different from different directions. If we have outages, moving some lines out to the road. I think I mentioned. Any of those strike you off the cuff as areas we should be leery of for any reason, and understanding this is not a binding question, just to give us some guidance as we're putting stuff together. Any of those things sound off the wall? We talked about right-of-way trimming. We may propose some of that as well, but any of those sound off the wall to you guys?
If you can justify it as something that reduces the frequency and duration of outages, and those all sound like things that could be argued to do just that, I think. So
terrific. Thank you. That's helpful.
Yeah.
They also seem pretty aligned with the plain language of the eligible activities, Louis. The relocation of power lines, reconductoring, hardening of power lines. I think you would want to make those associations very clear. This is what the utility industry looks at when they're looking at hardening, relocating. This is exactly how we fit in that definition or paradigm, and this is how it will reduce frequency and duration of outages, in particular, sort of those longer duration outages that we think of as more aligned with resilience versus sort of day-to-day reliability. But the reliability piece certainly feeds into that as well.
Yeah, that's great. We have recent experience for all these areas with major extended outages from big storms. So we have the data on outages related to these sections already as a baseline. So that's terrific. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, any other questions?
I don't know if we want to get into BABA requirements and Davis-Bacon at all. I think nobody's asking questions about those things, so maybe we just let it be. But,
To avoid hitting the limits of our knowledge of them. But
I think our union contracts take care of that for
I'm
us.
sure
I think
that I'm
we're
sure
in
that
good
I'm
shape.
sure the DVRA is probably not too far out of people's wheelhouse. The Build America, Buy America requirements are maybe something to consider. And so would just suggest that folks have their legal staff go over those potentially. I think there's some measures that have been brought up in this as potential projects or proposals that pretty clearly work without having to buy a whole lot of materials that might be worth considering. A chainsaw probably fits into the $250,000 waiver range for BABA requirements, whereas some other larger scale equipment for some of these allowable technologies might not. So
yeah, and the $250,000 is the what's I think called the small project waiver, and the $250,000, that our understanding is that is not based on the allocation amount, but based on the total project cost. So that's the allocation amount plus the cost match.
And you all may not know the answer to this, but would that be each project or would that be per utility allocation?
it's
Each project.
Yeah.
Project. Okay.
You may have answered this too, but if we use internal staff or linemen for hardening and things of that nature, if we track that, would that be our portion as far as our subrecipient cost match?
Maybe I'll let Sherry.
Yes, it should be. I'd have to look at the terms and conditions exactly, but generally, when you use employee time to do that, and you should be able to add admin costs into there as well as your cost match. So,
Okay.
paying salaries if you have someone that does that. So generally, all of that employee time can also be used as match.
Okay, so what we typically do, at least with FEMA and some of the other agencies we work with, is we keep a rolling spreadsheet, dates, times, equipment, manpower, costs, overheads, all that, so that we have the backup.
Yeah. Yep, and that's what we would require to show match. So like when you send in your report for match, that'd be what we would want. And the only thing, because you guys probably have to do match for so many different things, just make sure that when you're doing match, you're only doing it to this program and no other program is using that time. You have to, no double dip in there.
Yeah, and I'll follow up and confirm the terms and conditions relative to the staff time. And I'll have those updated in the question and answer document that we posted last week.
On trimming, once the trimming is done and you get an invoice saying it's done, do you send an inspector out to the different DUs to check to see if it really was done?
I think we reserve that right.
Yeah, we do. We reserve the right to monitor within the grant, just as the feds would if they ever did an audit on us. They could choose the program, any program that we granted to go and check the work. So in our monitoring, which I think we've still been sort of talking about, it could be a desk audit, say, you know, we want to see your invoices. We do a Teams chat with you. We want to see, have you show us your invoices of how you paid, your backup for paying, your cash match. It could be showing us maps that you guys are actively using to track where your trimming is happening, or it could be a monitoring, an in-house monitor where we call you up and schedule a time to come in, and where we could sit down and look at everything in-house, and then also pick out a few random spots to say, go show us, you know, how it's looking here. So
So this is all part of the administrative cost then?
what do you mean by that?
Well, isn't there a state cost match passed along to recipients? Is that part of the administrative cost?
To comply, are you asking whether administrative costs relative to complying with oversight?
All I'm doing, I'm looking at the schedule that was put out that lists our grant allocation. It lists our co-match, and then it says state cost match passed along to sub-recipients. For
Yes.
us, it's like $91,000. That's for you guys to administer it?
No, so this funding came with a recipient cost match. And the state of Vermont, we did at here at the department, we did not have the cash on hand to cover that recipient cost match. But we reserved the right through this grant agreement and through this program to pass that along to sub-recipients. So the way that works is we've passed that on. That's that 15% of the overall award is expected to be covered by the sub-recipients in lieu of us paying it, or in fact probably refusing to take the money.
Yeah, that's what I was asking.
Okay. Does that answer your question then? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I just,
Okay.
you know, for us, it's like $91,000, and it sounds like, you know, you're probably not doing it for anything, so you're getting it to administer the program, right?
We're not getting that recipient, is that the recipient match is not funds that we're taking. No.
No, that's funds we report back to DOE showing that cost match was spent within the program. So we will not receive your cost match.
So as
where does the $91,000 go?
So it could be, say you're doing line work and you have 5 employees doing line work and they make $100 an hour, however many hours of that, you can put down however many hours they work at $100 for, say, 2 weeks straight, 80 hours. That could go towards your cost match. So it's money you're already putting out, but it's the match of, you can use that money you're already putting out as cost match because they're working on this project. If you have to go out and buy any equipment for your project that's been approved, say you have to spend $100,000 on something, you could get grant money to cover $75,000 of that, and then the cost match of $25,000 that you would put in yourselves for that equipment. And then when you send us your invoices, it'll have the amount you need to be reimbursed, and then a statement showing what you've spent on cost match during that period of time.
think the table might be confusing. Do you have it in front of you?
I just opened it
There's
up.
a piece about
Oh, I don't have
Um,
the table in front of me.
So the,
subrecipient cost match, and then it says state share. So this is Lindenville, I think, talking about the 91,000.
right, and that perhaps should be,
Can you explain just
yeah.
what this column?
So just for all of these, you know, the grant allocation is what we've received as the recipient from this grant program. The state cost match, if you will, is the recipient cost match, probably more accurately in the grant documents that we have from the Department of Energy. And that's a 15% cost match requirement for the program. And what we're doing is we're passing that along because we do not have the funding to kind of meet that cost match internally. And then there is also the subrecipient cost match, which is in the, it's a different percentages based on your annual sales, and then it's monetized in the fourth column over, I suppose, for this purpose, $192,141,000 or $141. So what Linden Electric is going to have to do is come up with cost match, be it cash, in kind, or other, of the aggregate of 192, 141, and 91,023 to get the benefit of that 576,482.
So does this go back to, I think John asked the question, whether employees' time
Yeah.
would go towards their copay? So
Yes.
it's not only the copay, but
No.
an additional amount that you should put in also.
Correct.
So
Yes.
the utilities
Yeah. So you're
company, the copay,
Yep.
and this other fourth cost.
so for this kind of case, that would be, I think, in kind cost
Yeah.
match.
Yep.
And that would be, you would show us the not the pay stubs, but the coding of your employees' time that they spent X hours on this project itself. And those dollars would go towards either or either of those or both of those cost match requirements. It could be cash. I think John also talked about maybe we take out a loan, we hold that loan. You've got cash on hand. That money goes towards these projects. That's cash, a cost match. So yes, any of those kind of outlays of your assets would be considered cost match.
So I think it's going to be helpful if you guys at some point could just run through a couple examples on how it's going to work, if that's at all possible.
Anything's possible.
Sure. In the application process specifically, there's a training posted on our website of how to fill out the application and specifically how to build a budget. And in the budget process, building process in the application, it has, different items, and then you identify what percentage of that budget item is going to be paid for via cost match or by reimbursement through the grant. So it has you identify those individual items and the relative proportion or the gross amount that will be supplied by cost match or not.
So say you were doing trimming, you're going out and trimming a line. You think about everything you'll need for that line. So you'll need trimmers, which probably use gas. You're going to get there by a vehicle that uses gas. So in kind is generally money that you already put out to do your work. So, and in this case, you can use that in-kind cost that you would normally already have in your budget as part of your match on top of if you needed or bought anything else. So while you're working out your budget, say you're trimming a line, it takes 30 miles to get to that location from the start point. So you could work in all of your gas for 30 miles to and back. That could be used for in-kind in-kind cost match. I mean, if you really wanted to work, your vehicles into it somehow, you could do that. I'm not going to go into examples for that. That's more of an accounting question. But, gas is an easy one. So if you know that you're going to be using 500 gallons of gas to do one line, then you can work that in. That's part of your budget as gas to trim this line, vehicle gas and gas for the trimmers. If you need to use four-wheelers or side-by-sides to get out there, you can use those costs for gas. I mean, gas I'm just using because it's an easy one. You can figure out if you've figured out where you're going on your map, you work out your miles back and forth to each place, from their home location to the farthest location. In kind, you can really get it to grow and account for some cost match so you're not having to put extra out of pocket. If you have people in the office that work with paying your gas bills, paying invoices for gasoline, or paying, if you have leases on vehicles, that these are the ones being used, if they're paying salaries, as long as you're not using those salaries towards, say, another match for any other federal funds you're using, you could use the time they spend working on this project in-house. So if they're processing 5 invoices a week for a project and it takes them an hour, you can do their hourly salary. And it's not just like $50 an hour. It's, your hourly salary plus like fringe benefits that you can add on top of that. So the in-kind cost, the cost that you're already putting into this to your business, can be used for this match, and it's money you're already putting out. And then if you have to purchase anything on top of that, or if you had to hire a vendor to come in to, you're paying someone to do the tree cutting for you, then that's money your other match too, but that's match that, is probably cash match.
Yeah, the only question I had was, I understand the cost match because I do that all the time for others. It was the state cost match that had me kind of confused. And
Yeah.
I figured it was just part of the total grant application, and we're gonna get it at the end. That's what I assumed anyways.
Yeah, I think including the table in the chat probably wasn't my best move, because right now it's linked to in the RFP with a couple paragraphs explaining what it is. So I think looking at that table out of that context maybe added to some confusion. But if you refer to the RFP, it explains kind of the various components and how they work of the different cost match. So I take a look at that too as well. Heidi, it looks like you have a question. Feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I just wanted to just to confirm what we can anticipate is that for reimbursement, we would receive, if we use the total project cost, we would anticipate being reimbursed for the grant allocation only. So in the case of Swanton Village, we would receive reimbursement for $146,131.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions?
We can certainly revise that table and probably compress the match amounts into one column for clarity. And I think I heard it would be helpful if we put out some sample budgets for folks to look at. That's helpful. That's something we can pull together.
All right, if there are no more questions, if I could just ask everyone on the call to just say who they are and what organization they're representing, just so we can do a roll call. See how can we maybe just start with people on camera. John, do you want to go first? John Morley.
Yeah, John Morley representing both Barton Electric and Orleans Electric.
Let's get a John Abbott, maybe.
Yeah, John Abbott representing VEPSA.
Right. Louis Porter.
Yeah, Lewis Porter, Washington Electric, and on with me is Dave Kresak, Operations Director. Thank you.
James Weber.
Yeah, James Weber, Jacksonville Electric.
Great. Erica Weldon.
Erica Welton, representing Linden Electric Department, Financial Comptroller.
Ken Mason, Chair, Board of Electric Commissioners.
Jason LaFave, Superintendent.
Great. Heidi. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry about that.
You...
Heidi Britch Valenta with the Village of Swanton.
Great. Abby Miller.
Abby Miller with the Village of Venusburg.
Great. William Sheets, Bill Sheets.
Yep, Bill Sheets. Thank you for the presentation representing the Village of Swanton, Swanton Electric.
Great. And initials MWL, or is that organization?
Morrisville Water.
Morrisville.
Russ Buchan, the electrical superintendent for Morrisville Water and Light. And
Penny Jones, controller for Morrisville Water and Light.
Great. John DeSera.
John DeSera, Village of Venusburg.
And Steve Fitzhugh.
Yeah, Steve Fitzhugh. I'm the technical coordinator at Northfield Electric Department.
Great. And see anyone on the phone, not on camera.
Brian Hall, Vermont Electric.
Great.
Thank you.
And Sarah Brace, Hardwick Electric.
Great. And then Dave Graysock.
Yeah, Dave Graysock, Washington Electric.
Great. I missed anyone?
Michael Lazorchek, Town of Stowe Electric Department. I'm also curious if, for whatever reason, a utility isn't able to grab their share, are other utilities able to pick up that excess?
No.
No.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah, unspent funds. We're gonna say, yeah. I mean, Michael, we've
got two more tranches to potentially work through, and I think there's we're fully expecting to see those funds, and we'll probably continue to allocate. We will continue to allocate the way we have. So I think those funds, at least, everybody put their pens down. I think those funds will still remain with those entities through the term of the tranches being delivered to us, more than likely. And then if we get to the end of those deliveries and somebody hasn't claimed something, we will have to consider internally what we'll do with those funds at that point in time.
Yeah, hopefully that's helpful. Folks probably know there's some uncertainty around federal funding continuing to flow through the states in the coming years. So we're monitoring that, and obviously we want to see these funds fully expended and future funds received, but we cannot guarantee there will be future allocations.
All right. Well, I really appreciate everyone taking the time to join today. Hope that was helpful. always feel to reach out to me at andrew.chase@vermont.gov. I'm the main program contact. But other than that, thanks again, and hope everyone has a good rest of your day.
Thank you all for doing it. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks all.
Thanks.